Hi everyone, 20th of June, Tuesday, 21 minutes to midday in Australia, so it's almost lunchtime. Haven't done a video in 2 days, only just because there hasn't been a lot to talk about just over the weekend. The market's sort of really flattened out, and I've got a whole heap of things I want to talk about, and I'm going to run through each of these. I've got a few gold nuggets for people who do watch these videos. At the end of the day, it's not giving you advice, it's just giving you insight to things that you can go and research, so little gold nuggets. I'm also going to do a video at some stage about my favourite staking wallets. I'm having some good experiences with a couple of cryptocurrencies and in regards to proof of stake, and the ones that are actually working really well. So I'm going to run through that at another stage. But today, number one thing I've noticed in the last 24 hours is we've got a lot of movement. And if I looked at the volume on Sunday, and I did talk about this in my last video about looking at volume, and the volume across the board, and I'm talking about Bittrex only, and that's all I look at, and each exchange will have their own volume. However, you'll find that a lot of the exchanges do have a very similar story in regards to what's hot at that particular moment. So the volume will be sort of fairly reflective, although you'll see that different amounts of money are running through each different exchange based on their popularity. But in regards to Bittrex, 2 days ago, not much volume, probably 5 coins with over, say, 1,000 Bitcoin running through it at any one stage. In the last 24 hours, there's been a number of coins. There's probably 20 coins. It even goes over to the page 2 that are well over 1,000 Bitcoins pumping through it. Antshares is absolutely going through the roof with 27,000 and a half Bitcoins. Now, I think you may have missed the run on it. I think it went up 200% pretty much overnight. So when I was looking at it around about $6 Australian, and I think it hit a high almost just at 19 Australian dollars. So had an amazing run, and I went and had a look at the website, and it's essentially a website, or sorry, a blockchain that concentrates on smart contracts, and I think they've got a whole heap of new releases, and they're releasing onto some Chinese exchanges in the next few days. So it's pretty much everyone's buying in on the rumor, as they say, and you'll find that it may keep going, but I think there's a bit of a pullback actually happening right at this moment while I'm talking. So it did hit an all-time high. It's been smashing its all-time high for the last 24 hours, so very interesting to watch. The other one was First Blood, and then Golem was also on the run as well. And and I think you'll find that a lot of these have been pumped by particular pump groups and support groups, and they do seem to follow the same energy for a while, and then there's a little pullback, and they're almost simultaneous. So there's definitely a strategy in there. If you're smart enough to identify when to get in, and you've got the time to sit there and watch, you can definitely make some amazing gains as long as you you're brave enough to get out. And I think that's the key: is take your profit at a certain level. And don't be too stressed about missing out if it keeps on going, But that's trading. It's not for me. I've done a few of those and done very well, but for me, I find that definitely buying on the lows and just stacking is the way to go. So first thing is volume is up. Digibyte has hit a bottom, I believe. Even when you look way back, probably a month and a half, it's hit a massive resistance point. So about 1100 sats. So I think that's pretty much where it's at its bottom. Again, that's just my instincts. I feel that it's building up and due for a big run. And even when I look at the volume, it did drop off the first page. Was running around about 500 Bitcoins for the day. And what's happened today? Volume is up to 1,500 Bitcoins. So it's up 1,000 Bitcoins in volume just today, and it's up about 5%. So is it about to surge forward? Is it the next one that they're planning to pump along? And I think you might find that it could be. Another one is Siacoin, very similar to Digibyte in regards to information management. I heard a little gold nugget that they're about to get included onto a major Chinese exchange. which is very good news for Siacoin because that's going to expose them to a very large new market. So I think that's in about 3 days. Again, sometimes people sell on the news, so it's good to, if you get a gold nugget, to maybe jump in now and have a look, and you might make a few gains. But again, not financial advice, just giving you a little bit of insight. I do like Siacoin. I'm not even invested in it. I should be. It's up 35.5% today. I know it does align with my Digibyte ideology. So at some stage, I think it's still around about 2.5 cents Australian. So it's still a very, 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 very good buy. And it's got on Bittrex here 3,200 Bitcoin. So its volume has definitely increased. And even when I was setting all of this up on the screen, it was down the page at about 1,100. So I think it might be in for another major surge. Actually, what I'll do is I'll just click on this. Let's just have a little look at the screen. A bit of a graph, and there you go. So what's that? Well, about 8 hours worth. Definitely on the rise. So bang, I've made a call there. Definitely worth having a look. But it's one of those scenarios where you go, am I buying on the high? But what I'm finding is that these pump groups, they tend to, we've looked at Antshares overnight. I mean, it's been a 24-hour run. So there's time to get in if you're brave enough to do that, and then get out at the right time. Profit's profit. So Siacoin. The other one, Antshares is up. I've said that, but I feel like it's going to bleed at some stage. Someone did took a major win at the top, and they did bring it right down. 20% in pretty much a second. It did bounce back pretty fast, but these are the things that you've got to be prepared for in the trading world. Verge and Red, two minnows at the bottom of Bittrex. I like Verge. I'm in their Telegram all the time. I talk to the dev in theory through the Telegram. He's very active in there, and he's really building a very strong community based on communication. So that's what I really like. He's in there and he's talking about what he's developing, what he can see in the future. He talks about the features of the coin. He's got other people in the Telegram helping him make the website look a lot sharper, and even when I've looked on there today, I'm actually getting a little bit more impressed with that first impression. The back-end technology of Verge is really, really good in regards to privacy. I would almost say it's one of the only coins that actually gives full privacy in regards to transactions. Still has an open ledger, I think, or a ledger, but in regards to transactions, it's private. And same with a bit like Monero, but he's talking about it even being even more secure than Monero. So I think Verge is a sleeping giant. Redcoin, I'm not 100% sure. I think they've got some new stuff coming out in September. However, it might be a ×5 coin later on. I've got a bit of a stake in it, but I think that it's going to have some movements at some stage. It just can't sit at the bottom of a cryptocurrency market in this environment based on what's going to be happening with cryptos as a whole, and just sit there. There's money is going to enter that market cap for both of those coins, and I think you're going to find that it is going to rise. So it's worth getting some, I believe, and locking it away. And so that's my another little gold nugget. Next pump. Well, I'm not a pump person. I don't really talk in those terms, but there's a lot of talk about these coins are about to see a new stage of development and growth. And like I said, you look at the volume today, it looks like it's going ballistic. There's a few coins that have already had that pump, Litecoin, and we've seen Ripple just sort of stagnate for well over a month now. So I'm sort of staying away from those. I have got a bit of Litecoin, but these are the ones I've just store, and I do mine Litecoin and Bitcoin and Monero and Ethereum. So they're just slowly drip feeding and growing on the side. I'm not having to worry too much about those. But yeah, that was that. And now the main thing I wanted to talk about was Bancor. Now I mentioned it the other day in regards to that. I heard on the grapevine that Bancor had a backdoor bit of code that allowed entities to generate coins at their own discretion. Now, I'm not saying that that's been proven. It's just something that I heard. Whether I have not been able to prove this, I'm not, but it's something that I think people should be mindful of. Now, in saying this, in the irony of all of this, I had a kind viewer send me a link in regards to an article dated the 11th of the 10th, 2011. So this is 6 years ago, and it's in relation to Bancor. Now, take this with a grain of salt, but I found it very interesting. I don't believe anyone's talking about this. Now, whether this little bit of information here was deliberate to, sort of bit of conditioning to people to get used to a one world currency. But I'm going to read this little article out to you in regards to Bancor from 2011, okay, so almost 7 years ago. Bancor, a one currency world on the IMF table. I'll start out by quoting our Bob Swern's July 2010 diary, a Bastille Day reminder, we reap what we sow. Now, what he's got here is Fez here. I'm not terribly optimistic about the survival of the open world economy. I believe that absent measures like Keynes' Bancor proposal, large trade flows over time produce destabilising international capital flows. Citizens are not prepared to suffer sudden, dramatic losses of savings and high odds of unemployment or reduced income in the name of world trade. Containing the downside would require a considerable loss of national sovereignty, which again few are prepared to accept. I sort of agree with this. I think a lot of people are going to sort of be wary of cryptos for some time until the market caps reach a certain level due to the volatility of these coins. I think some people will want to be able to lock their value, and I can see that being something in the future. I know that one of my Bitcoin accounts, I can actually hedge my funds. So if my Bitcoin comes to a certain level, I can just move it into a hedge fund and I can lock it in Australian dollars, which gives me a little bit. I don't actually do that, but I think it will give some people some confidence, and they could actually turn it on and off depending on the market. Now, if the market's rising, they can open up the floodgates and hopefully make a profit, and then they can lock it and move it back into AUD where it's just sitting there for everyday use. And that's one of the challenges. Is I don't think many people are going to want to jump into a volatile currency. Because obviously, you could lose money, and there's a lot of conservatives out there. But getting back onto this Bancor document. Back in November 2010, I wrote a diary because I caught wind that China was using $50 billion to buy a new IMF-issued SDR, and other countries were following suit. I couldn't figure out how this could work until now. It turns out Svez was correct. An open world economy needs a world currency. An international currency called the Bancor is being discussed by the IMF. Now, this is how owners of bonds in the basket, the SDR, can cash out. They can use their dollars to buy IMF SDRs and then receive Bancors to trade with the world. This move would eliminate the US dollar as the world's reserve currency. To save you time, I've posted the IMF Bancor language below. So this is an extract from pages 26 and 27 of the IMF discussion. So from SDR to Bancor, a limitation of the SDR as discussed previously, that it is not a currency. And though an SDR-based system would move away from a dominant national currency, excuse my interpretation here, or dictation, called, for example, Bancor in honours of Keynes, such as a currency could be used as a medium of exchange and outside money, in contrast to the SDR, which remains an inside money. It would be essential to construct governance and arrangements that ensure accountability to the Bancor issuing institution while assuring its independence. Sorry, this is not making a heap of sense, but what I'll do is, obviously you can always pause the video and you can see this little paragraph here if you want to just read that again. So I'm just going to read the last bit. Why Bancor? Question mark. A global currency. Bancor is issued by a global central bank, which would be designed as a stable store of value that is not tied exclusively to the conditions of a particular economy. So I'm assuming they're talking about it being stable. I mean, that's the word they've used. So moving on to there, that's a bit of talk about Bancor. Emphasis on away from a dominant national currency mine. That means the dollar would not be the reserve currency anymore. It's interesting. I mean, I think it's inevitable that we're going to see fiat currency dissolve. Whether the US dollar remains the reserve currency, I'm not sure. I think It's obviously in a lot of trouble. It may move to the blockchain. I think there's going to have to be an international blockchain, or I think there could be, or there's going to have to be a transition, whether we go to corporatized cryptocurrencies. I think that's the future as well. Let me just keep reading this. Okay, consider the following quote from Avinash Pursued of State Street Bank and Trust. Reserve currencies come and go. Over the past 2,500 years, there have been over a dozen reserve currencies that no longer exist. Sterling lost its status in the first half of the 20th century, and the dollar will lose its status in the first half of this century. Losing reserve currency status will lead to a series of economic and political crises in the United States. No doubt about that, and it's coming. Okay, unless the number of votes in the IMF exceed their 16% votes, and there is talk that China, India, Russia and Brazil might vote together, how many others can they get to exceed the votes of the Western world? And even if they did manage to do so, would the vote be honoured? So many questions. What I think really stinks is that that the moves of the IMF are outside of the people's vote, unless there are national laws that determine how the governor for a country can vote. The biggest downside to the dollar losing its reserve currency position is hyperinflation, according to many who talk about this possibility, because we now import so much. We now import so much of what we need to survive. Many think this will happen next year, prior to the presidential election. This is back in 2011. It didn't happen because of quantitative easing, in my opinion anyway. I have faith in people in there. Well, I have faith in the people here. Whatever way things churn, I believe we will put aside ideology and work together as communities to feed our children. Voluntary societies, 100%. That's what we should be moving. I'd like to see the whole governmental structure, the whole administration move to the blockchain, into a voluntary system where we actually vote and support all of our requirements and administrative duties through the blockchain. I think it can be done. That's my grand idea, something I might work on. I'd like to get to see the old cronies moved out of politics, and we move to a voluntary society where we vote and support our communities based on strength of human behaviour. I just know it can be done. I have faith in humanity, and I know that we can do it. So in end of that particular article, it was actually quite hard to read, so I do apologise for that. It wasn't very smooth. But this is the Bancor, and they were talking about it becoming the one world currency. Now, it is actually out. I think it's just been released in the mainstream, if you want to call it, onto the markets a couple of weeks ago. So it's had its ICO and things like that. So this is 7 years on. Here it is, the Bancor. Whether it's by chance a different entity, I'm not sure. I'm going to have to go and a little research it. It scares me. If anything to do with this IMF and one world currencies and things like that, and anything that's got BANCOR or Bancor in it, I don't really want to be a part of it. It sounds like Bank Corporation to me. I've had enough of that. The last 50 years, and I'm only 43, but 43 this year. But I'm talking about in regards to politics. I've just had enough of the corruption, and I think everyone is pretty much getting fed up, and we don't really have too many answers because I don't think too many people like confrontation. So, but that's all I wanted to share with you today. Lots of movement in the markets, lots of volume. Have a look. ETH's just, while I've been doing this, has just hit 10,000 Bitcoin. So around about 4,000 Bitcoin has just entered to the ETH market. So there's a little scoop for you. I'll probably go and have a look at that. You might find there's going to be a little bit of an influx happening with Ethereum very, very shortly. But again, volume doesn't always speak of the actual movement in the market, but it does tell a big story, especially when you see a coin that hasn't got much volume and all of a sudden it receives a lot of volume. It tends to do pretty well in the short term. So that's all I got. Thanks for watching. I've got more videos coming. Let me know what you think in comments. Hit me up on Steemit. Follow me there. I've got my blog, and I do actually write some literature or some language with a lot of these videos as well, just expressing different viewpoints. But yeah, thanks for watching. Tune in to the next one. Thanks, guys.